Blood dotted the pristine white wedding dress, now torn and mudded, as Beatrice Greene fled through the twilight, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. She hadn't planned to run, not today of all days, but when the shots rang out during what should have been the happiest moment of her life, instinct took over. Now, as the cool spring air of 1875 whipped against her tear-streaked face, Beatrice could think of only one place to hide: the old Wilkins barn at the edge of Redemption Creek. The small frontier town of Redemption Creek, Wyoming Territory, had been peaceful until today. Beatrice had arrived 6 months ago to teach at the one-room schoolhouse, a respectable position for a 22-year-old unmarried woman from Boston. She'd quickly caught the eye of Gerald Thorne, the town's most prosperous merchant, a man twice her age with ambitions as grand as his bank account. Marriage to Gerald had seemed practical, sensible even, offering security in this harsh landscape. But her heart had betrayed her long before today's catastrophe. The barn loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the purpling sky. Beatrice gathered her ruined skirts and pushed through the pain in her side, the stabbing reminder of how far she'd run. Behind her, the distant sounds of horses and shouting men drove her forward. The wedding guests would be in chaos, but someone would surely come looking for her, the runaway bride with blood on her dress. Not her blood. Never her blood. The memory of Gerald's face as the bullet struck him flashed before her eyes. The shock in his expression as he fell at the altar would haunt her forever. Beatrice yanked the heavy barn door open just enough to slip inside, then pulled it closed behind her. Darkness enveloped her, the musty smell of hay and horses filling her nostrils. She stumbled forward, feeling her way along the wall until she found a smaller door, the tack room. Perfect. She slipped inside and pulled the door almost shut, leaving just a sliver to peer through. Minutes passed like hours as Beatrice tried to calm her breathing. The fading daylight filtering through the barn's high windows cast long shadows across the dirt floor. She'd lost her veil somewhere in her desperate flight, and now she tugged the pins from her elaborately styled hair, letting it fall in chestnut waves around her shoulders. A sound outside froze her in place, the unmistakable crunch of boots on gravel. Someone was approaching. Beatrice pressed herself against the wall behind the door, her heart thundering so loudly she feared it might give her away. The barn door creaked open. A shaft of dying sunlight cut through the darkness, illuminating dust motes swirling in its path. A tall silhouette filled the doorway, the shape of a man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. "Hello." The voice was deep, gentle, familiar. "Anyone in here?" Beatrice remained silent, her fingers pressed against her lips. The footsteps moved closer to her hiding place. She could see him now through the crack in the door: Samuel Quade, the cattle rancher whose land bordered the north edge of town. She'd met him several times since arriving in Redemption Creek, most recently when he'd visited her classroom to speak to the children about raising cattle. There had been something in his blue eyes that day, something that made her heart flutter in a way that Gerald's presence never had. The footsteps stopped just outside her hiding place. Beatrice held her breath. Then, so softly she almost missed it, a gentle knock on the tack room door. "It's me you're running toward," Samuel said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not away from." Tears sprang to Beatrice's eyes. The words pierced her like an arrow, striking some truth she'd been denying for months. Slowly, she pushed the door open. There stood Samuel, hatless now, his dark hair slightly mussed. His face, bronzed from years under the sun, showed nothing but concern. No judgment, no accusation, just worry in those startling blue eyes. "How did you know I was here?" Beatrice whispered. "I saw you running from town," Samuel said. "Figured you'd head for somewhere to hide." He glanced at her torn dress, his eyes widening at the blood. "Are you hurt?" Beatrice shook her head. "It's not mine, it's Gerald's. Someone shot him at the altar." Samuel's expression darkened. "I know, the whole town's in an uproar." He hesitated. "They're saying you did it." "What?" Beatrice gasped, her hand flying to her throat. I would never, I know that, Samuel said firmly, but Gerald's brother is convincing folks otherwise, says you had cold feet and planned the whole thing. That's absurd, tears threatened again. I was standing right beside Gerald when it happened. The shot came from outside through the church window. Samuel nodded. I believe you, but Vernon Thorne has the sheriff's ear and half the town thinks you're guilty already. He extended his hand. You can't stay here, they'll search the town soon enough. Beatrice stared at his outstretched hand. Where would we go? My ranch, for now. It's remote enough that we can figure things out. His eyes met hers, steady and sure. I'll keep you safe, Beatrice, I promise. Something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, made Beatrice believe him. She placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Why are you helping me? She asked. Samuel's lips curved in a slight smile. Because I've watched you these past months, teaching those children with such patience and care. Smiling at everyone in town, even old Mrs. Wilson who never has a kind word for anyone, he paused. And because I saw your face every time Gerald Thorne touched you, you flinched, just slightly, but enough. Beatrice looked away, shame coloring her cheeks. He was demanding. But he offered security. Security isn't worth your happiness, Samuel said simply. Now come, my horse is waiting outside the back of the barn. Leading her through the darkness, Samuel guided Beatrice to a rear door she hadn't noticed before. Outside, a magnificent chestnut stallion stood waiting, tethered loosely to a post. This is Thunder, Samuel said, patting the horse's neck. Fastest horse in the territory. Without warning, he bent and placed his hands around Beatrice's waist, lifting her easily onto the saddle. The unexpected contact sent a jolt through her body that had nothing to do with fear. He swung up behind her, his chest solid against her back as he reached around to take the reins. Hold tight, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. They rode north through gathering darkness, keeping to the shadows of the tree line whenever possible. Samuel's ranch lay 15 miles from town, nestled against the foothills where the open range gave way to wooded slopes. Beatrice had never been there, though she'd heard the children speak of the rocking queue with admiration. Samuel Quade was fair to his hands and kind to children who visited, a rarity in this harsh territory. As they rode, Beatrice's thoughts spun wildly. Gerald dead, herself accused of murder. Running away with a man she barely knew but somehow trusted implicitly. The absurdity of it all would have made her laugh if the situation weren't so dire. Samuel, she said after they'd ridden in silence for some time. Sam, he corrected gently. Only the banker calls me Samuel, and that's when he's denying me a loan. Despite everything, Beatrice smiled. Sam, then, what did you mean back at the barn when you said I was running toward you? His arms tightened slightly around her. I've seen the way you look at me sometimes, Beatrice. When you think no one's watching, it's the same way I look at you. Heat flooded her cheeks, and she was grateful for the darkness. That's rather presumptuous, Mr. Quade. Is it? His voice carried a note of amusement. Then why did you come with me so readily? Because you're the only one offering help when I'm accused of murder, she retorted, but there was no real heat in her words. Fair enough, Sam conceded, but I think there's more to it than that. Beatrice couldn't deny it, not even to herself. From the first moment, she'd met Sam Quade at a town social her first week in Redemption Creek. She'd felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. He wasn't like the other men in town with their rough manners and cruder speech. Sam was educated, thoughtful. He spoke to her as an equal, listened when she talked about books or ideas. But he was also a rancher with modest means, while Gerald had offered her a fine house and security in a place where women had few options. She'd made what she thought was the practical choice, ignoring the way her heart raced whenever Sam entered a room. Your silence speaks volumes, Miss Greene, Sam said softly. It's been a trying day, she replied, deflecting. I'd rather not discuss matters of the heart while fleeing a murder accusation. Sam chuckled, the sound rumbling against her back. As you wish. They rode on, the only sounds the steady rhythm of thunder's hooves and the nocturnal chorus of crickets and frogs. The moon rose, casting silver light across the landscape, illuminating the path ahead. "Almost there," Sam said eventually, pointing to lights twinkling in the distance. The rocking Q Ranch house was larger than Beatrice had expected, a sturdy two-story structure built of logs and stone. Several smaller outbuildings surrounded it, and a large barn stood nearby. As they approached, a dog began barking, alerting the household to their arrival. A weathered man with a silver beard emerged from the house, rifle in hand. He relaxed when he recognized Sam but tensed again at the sight of Beatrice in her torn wedding dress. "Sam, what in tarnation, evening, Hank, we've got trouble. Miss Greene needs sanctuary." Sam dismounted, then helped Beatrice down, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "This is Hank Wilcox, my foreman, trustworthy as they come." Hank eyed Beatrice warily, taking in her bedraggled appearance. "This the school teacher, the one getting hitched to Thorne today." "The wedding was interrupted," Sam said grimly. "Gerald Thorne was shot dead at the altar. They're blaming Miss Greene." Hank's bushy eyebrows shot up. "And you brought her here, Sam. If the sheriff, I know the risks," Sam cut in, "but she's innocent and I aim to prove it." Hank shook his head but stepped aside. "Your ranch, your trouble, but you might want to get the lady some different clothes. That dress is like a beacon." Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable. Simple but well-crafted furniture filled the main room, and a fire burned cheerfully in a stone hearth. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that made Beatrice's heart leap with recognition: Dickens, Twain, Austen, and many more. "You read," she said, unable to hide her surprise. Sam smiled. "Did you think cowboys only read trail maps and wanted posters?" "No, Beatrice faltered. "In Boston, many men considered reading fiction beneath them, something for women and children. Well, out here we take our pleasures where we can find them." Sam gestured toward a hallway. "There's a spare room where you can rest, and I believe I can find you something more practical to wear, though it might not fit perfectly." Beatrice suddenly became acutely aware of her appearance, her torn dress, her disheveled hair, the dried blood on her bodice. She must look a fright. "Thank you, I would appreciate that." Sam led her to a small but clean bedroom. "Wait here, I'll bring water for washing and find you some clothes." Left alone, Beatrice sank onto the edge of the bed, the events of the day crashing over her in waves. Gerald was dead. Shot before they could even say their vows. And now she was suspected of murdering him. It was too much to comprehend. She didn't realize she was crying until Sam returned, carrying a basin of water and some folded clothes. He set them down and knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Hey now," he said gently. "I know it's overwhelming, but you're safe here." Beatrice wiped her eyes. "I hardly knew him, you know, not really. We never spoke of anything meaningful. He talked about his business, his plans for expansion. I talked about the school. We were like strangers agreeing to share a house." Sam nodded, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Why did you agree to marry him then?" She gave a humorless laugh. "Security, respectability. What other options does a woman alone have out here? I could teach until they found someone younger or until I made the mistake of having an opinion the town council disagreed with." "Then what? You could have married for love," Sam suggested quietly. Beatrice met his gaze. "Love is a luxury many women can't afford." Sam stood, releasing her hands. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to clear your name." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Beatrice stripped off her ruined wedding dress, using the water to wash away the day's grime and Gerald's blood. The clothes Sam had provided, a simple cotton shirt and trousers that must belong to a young ranch hand, were clean and smelled faintly of sunshine. She put them on, rolled up the two long pant legs, and climbed into bed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep proved elusive. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Gerald falling, heard the screams of the wedding guests. And beneath it all, like a persistent melody, ran Sam's words. "It's me you're running toward." Was he right? Had she been running toward him all along, even as she walked down the aisle toward another man? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the uncurtained window. Beatrice rose, her body aching from the previous day's flight. She braided her long hair and ventured out to find Sam. He was in the kitchen, cooking breakfast alongside an older woman who was introduced as Mrs. Morty, the ranch cook. The Italian woman clucked sympathetically when Sam explained Beatrice's situation, then insisted on feeding her proper food for strength. Beatrice found herself seated at the table with a plate piled high with eggs, bacon, and biscuits. "I've been thinking," Sam said as he joined her, his own plate more modestly filled. "Vernon Thorne will be pushing the sheriff to form a posse. We need to find out who really shot Gerald before they come looking for you here." "But how?" "I didn't see anything. The shot came through the window while the minister was speaking." "Someone must have seen something," Sam insisted. "A shooter couldn't just disappear into thin air." They were interrupted by Hank bursting into the kitchen, his weathered face grave. "Riders coming." "Looks like the sheriff and about 5 men," Sam cursed under his breath. "Already, they must have tracked us here." He turned to Beatrice. "Quick, through the back. There's a root cellar behind the house. Hide there until I come for you." Heart pounding, Beatrice followed Mrs. Morty through the back door and across a small vegetable garden to a wooden door set into a small hillside. The older woman opened it, revealing stone steps leading down into darkness. "Stay quiet, Cara," Mrs. Morty whispered. "Senor Sam will protect you." The root cellar was cool and earthy smelling, lined with shelves of preserved foods and vegetables. Beatrice huddled in the darkest corner, straining to hear what was happening outside. Muffled voices reached her, but she couldn't make out the words. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, the cellar door opened, and Sam's silhouette appeared against the bright daylight. "They're gone," he said, helping her up the steps. "For now." Back in the house, Sam explained that Sheriff Billings had indeed been looking for Beatrice, but claimed to have followed tracks from town rather than knowing she was specifically at the rocking queue. "I convinced him you weren't here," Sam said. "Showed him the bunkhouse and main house. But he's suspicious. Said he'd be back with a proper search warrant." "What do we do now?" Beatrice asked, fear clutching at her heart again. "We investigate," Sam replied firmly. "The sheriff mentioned something interesting. Gerald wasn't killed with a rifle shot through the window as everyone thought. He was shot at close range with a small caliber pistol. Someone in the church killed him." Beatrice gasped. "But that's impossible. I was right beside him." "I would have seen," she stopped abruptly, a memory surfacing. "Wait, there was such confusion when he fell, people rushing forward screaming. Someone bumped into me hard. I thought it was just the crowd, but who was near you? Who could have done it?" Beatrice closed her eyes, trying to recall the chaotic moments. "Vernon was beside Gerald as his best man. The minister was in front of us. My maid of honor, Lucille Porter, was beside me, and Gerald's business partner, Edmund Hayes, was in the front row." "Hayes," Sam repeated thoughtfully. "I've heard rumors that Hayes and Gerald had a falling out recently, something about a mining investment gone wrong." "Gerald never mentioned any trouble," Beatrice said, "but he rarely discussed business with me." Sam paced the kitchen, thinking, "We need to get back to town. Talk to people who were there, find out who really killed Gerald." "I can't go back," Beatrice protested. "They'll arrest me on sight." "Not if they don't recognize you," Sam said with a gleam in his eye. An hour later, Beatrice hardly recognized herself. Her long chestnut hair was tucked up under a wide-brimmed hat, her face smudged with dirt to disguise her features. Dressed in the ranch hand's clothes with a bandana covering the lower half of her face, she looked like a young cowboy, not the refined schoolteacher the town knew. "Remember," Sam instructed as they prepared to ride, "keep your head down, speak as little as possible, and let me do the talking. We'll say you're my new hand, just arrived from Colorado." They rode into Redemption Creek as the afternoon sun began its descent. The town was unusually quiet, many businesses closed out of respect for Gerald Thorne. Black crepe draped the door of his mercantile store. Sam led Beatrice to the livery stable at the edge of town, where they left their horses in the care of old Ezra Smith, a man known for his discretion and dislike of the Thorne family after a long-ago business dispute. "Heard about the trouble," Ezra said, eyeing Beatrice curiously but asking no questions about Sam's companion. "Whole town's talking about nothing else." "What are they saying?" Sam asked casually, passing Ezra a coin for the horse's care. "That the schoolteacher done shot her bridegroom dead, then ran off." Ezra spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Load of horse manure, if you ask me. That Greene girl wouldn't hurt a fly. Any other theories?" Sam pressed. Ezra leaned in. "Vernon Thorne's mighty quick to inherit his brother's business, ain't he? And that Hayes fella was seen arguing with Gerald just yesterday." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "Where might we find Hayes now?" "Staying at the hotel, though he spends most afternoons at the saloon." Ezra glanced at the sun. "Should be there now, if his habits hold." Sam thanked him, and they made their way toward the Silver Dollar Saloon. Beatrice had never set foot in such an establishment. It would have been scandalous for the schoolteacher, and she stayed close to Sam's side as they entered the dimly lit interior. The saloon was half full, mostly men drinking away their sorrows or celebrating the end of a workday. A few glances came their way, but most returned to their drinks, uninterested in a rancher and his young hand. Sam spotted Hayes at a corner table, nursing a whiskey alone. The businessman looked haggard, his usually impeccable suit rumpled, his face unshaven. "Mr. Hayes," Sam said, approaching the table. "Mind if we join you?" Hayes looked up, recognition dawning slowly. "Quade, isn't it? The rancher from north of town." His eyes slid to Beatrice, showing only mild curiosity. "Don't know your friend. New hand," Sam said dismissively. "Just hired him from Colorado." He sat without waiting for an invitation. After a moment's hesitation, Beatrice did the same. "Terrible business with Gerald Thorne." Hayes knocked back the rest of his whiskey. "Terrible," he agreed hoarsely. "Good man, Gerald. Don't know what I'll do without him." "I hear you two had a disagreement recently," Sam said, his tone casual as he signaled the barkeep for drinks. Hayes stiffened. "Who told you that, small town?" "People talk," Sam shrugged. "Something about a mining investment." The businessman's shoulders slumped. "It was nothing serious, just a difference of opinion on a silver mine down near Laramie. I wanted to invest. Gerald thought it was too risky." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out he was right. The mine flooded last month. Would have lost everything if we'd gone in on it." Beatrice frowned beneath her bandana. This didn't sound like a man with a motive for murder. "So you and Gerald were on good terms?" Sam pressed. "Of course." Hayes looked confused, then comprehension dawned. "Wait, you don't think I had anything to do with his death? That's absurd. Gerald was my friend and partner for 15 years. Just asking questions," Sam said soothingly. "The sheriff seems convinced Miss Greene is guilty, but some folks have their doubts." Hayes snorted. "Greene. That slip of a girl, I was there, saw the whole thing. She looked as shocked as anyone when Gerald fell." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Between us, I think it was Vernon. He's been itching to take over the mercantile for years. Gerald kept him on a short leash, gave him a salary but no real authority. With Gerald gone, everything goes to Vernon." This matched what Sam had been thinking. "Did you see Vernon near Gerald when the shot was fired?" Hayes frowned, trying to remember. "He was standing right beside him as best man, but there was such confusion. Wait." His eyes widened. "Vernon insisted on adjusting Gerald's boutonniere just before the ceremony started, made a big show of it. Could have slipped a small pistol into his coat then." Beatrice felt a chill. She remembered that moment, Vernon fussing with the flower on Gerald's lapel, both brothers laughing. It had seemed like a rare moment of warmth between the siblings. "Has anyone searched Vernon's house?" Sam asked. Hayes shook his head. "Why would they? He's the victim's brother." They left Hayes contemplating another whiskey and stepped back onto the street. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows between the buildings. "Vernon," Beatrice said quietly. "It makes sense. He always resented living in Gerald's shadow. We need proof, Sam replied. The sheriff won't take our word over Vernon's. The pistol, Beatrice suggested, if we could find it. Vernon's too smart to keep it, Sam mused. He'd have disposed of it. He stopped suddenly, snapping his fingers. Unless he didn't have time. Vernon organized the search party for you almost immediately after the shooting. What if the gun is still hidden in the church? The small white clapboard church stood silent at the end of the main street, its doors closed following the tragedy. Sam and Beatrice approached cautiously, checking for any signs of the sheriff or his deputies. It's unlocked, Sam whispered, testing the door. Small mercies in a God-fearing town. Inside, the church was eerily quiet, the last rays of sunlight filtering through stained glass windows and casting colored patterns on the wooden pews. The area around the altar still showed signs of the disruption, a hymnal on the floor, a forgotten lady's glove, scattered flower petals. This is where it happened, Beatrice said softly, approaching the altar. She could almost see Gerald standing there, waiting for her, unaware that death was moments away. Sam began searching methodically, checking under pews behind the pulpit in the small vestry off to the side. Beatrice stood where she had during the ceremony, trying to recreate the scene in her mind. Vernon was here, she said, pointing to a spot beside where Gerald would have stood. He adjusted the flower, then stepped back. The minister began speaking, then she closed her eyes, remembering. There was a loud noise from outside, someone shouted. Everyone looked toward the window. That must have been when Vernon pulled the gun. Sam knelt by the altar, running his hands along the wooden railing. He would have needed to hide it quickly afterward. His fingers caught on something. Wait. Pulling harder, a small panel in the railing came loose, revealing a hollow space. Sam reached inside and pulled out a small pistol. Got it. The church door banged open. I thought I might find you here, said a cold voice. Vernon Thorne stood in the doorway, his own pistol trained on them. Behind him, the sheriff looked grim. Vernon, Beatrice said, straightening up and pulling down her bandana. Why did you kill your brother? Vernon's lip curled. He was going to sell the business, move back east with you. After all my years of work, he was just going to walk away and leave me with nothing. His eyes darted to the gun in Sam's hand. I see you found my insurance policy. Drop your weapon, Vernon, Sheriff Billings said, his voice tight. You told me we were coming to catch the schoolteacher and her accomplice, but it seems I've been chasing the wrong killer. Vernon's face contorted with rage. He swung his pistol toward the sheriff, but before he could fire, Billings's own gun barked. Vernon crumpled to the church floor, clutching his shoulder and cursing. You're under arrest for the murder of Gerald Thorne, Billings said, kicking Vernon's dropped pistol away. He looked at Beatrice apologetically. And it seems I owe you an apology, Miss Greene. The aftermath unfolded quickly. Vernon, facing the gallows for his brother's murder, confessed fully, hoping for leniency. The town of Redemption Creek reeled from the revelation, struggling to reconcile the respected businessman they thought they knew with the killer he had become. For Beatrice, the weeks that followed were a time of healing and revelation. She resumed her teaching position, the town council issuing a formal apology for suspecting her. Gerald was laid to rest properly, and though Beatrice attended the funeral, she did so as a respectful acquaintance rather than a grieving bride. And then there was Sam. He rode into town regularly, ostensibly on business, but his visits to the schoolhouse became the subject of gentle gossip. They would walk together after school hours, talking of books and dreams and the future. 3 months after that fateful wedding day, Sam and Beatrice sat on the porch of her small teacher's cottage, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. I've been thinking, Sam said, taking her hand in his. The rocking queue is doing well. I've added 200 head of cattle this year and hired 3 more hands. That's wonderful, Beatrice said, smiling. You've worked hard for it. Thing is, he continued, suddenly looking nervous, that big house gets mighty lonely with just me in it. Been thinking it needs a woman's touch. A good library, too, for all those books you're always recommending. Beatrice's breath caught. Sam Quade, are you asking me something? He slid from the porch swing to one knee before her, still holding her hand. From his pocket, he produced a simple gold band with a small, perfect diamond. Beatrice Greene, from the moment I saw you step off that stagecoach 6 months ago, I knew you were special. I love your mind, your heart, your courage. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Tears sprang to Beatrice's eyes, happy tears this time. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. Sam's face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. No running away this time, he teased gently. Beatrice laughed, pulling him up to sit beside her again. No running away. That day at the barn, you were right. I was running toward you all along, even if I didn't realize it yet. I knew, Sam said, drawing her close. Some things a man just knows in his heart. Their wedding, held the following spring, couldn't have been more different from Beatrice's first attempt. They married outdoors, beneath the spreading branches of an old oak tree on rocking Kew land. The entire town turned out to celebrate, along with Sam's ranch hands and neighboring farmers. As Beatrice walked toward Sam, wearing a simple dress of pale blue rather than formal white, there was no fear in her heart, no sense of compromise or settling. Only love, pure and true, and the certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Sam took her hands in his as the minister began to speak. No running this time, he whispered, his eyes twinkling. No need, Beatrice whispered back. I'm already where I want to be. Years passed and the rocking Kew prospered under their joint care. Beatrice continued to teach for a time, eventually opening a small library in town with money from Gerald's estate, which had partly come to her as his intended bride. Sam expanded his cattle operation, gaining a reputation for fair dealings and quality stock. Their first child, a daughter named Lily, arrived a year after their wedding, followed by twin boys, Matthew and Mark, 2 years later. The ranch house rang with children's laughter and the animated discussions of a family that valued both learning and hard work. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Sam surprised Beatrice with a special gift and expansion to the house that included a large, light-filled room lined with bookshelves. Your very own library, he said, leading her into the space with her eyes covered. For the woman who taught me that running toward love is the bravest thing a person can do. Beatrice turned in the center of the room, taking in the shelves already filled with books, the comfortable chairs positioned to catch the best light, the desk where she could write her own stories, a passion she'd discovered in recent years. It's perfect, she said, eyes shining with tears of happiness. Like everything about this life we've built together. Sam pulled her close, his arms as strong and sure as they had been on that terrifying day when she'd fled a wedding-turned-tragedy. Not bad for a cowboy and a runaway bride, is it? Not bad at all, Beatrice agreed, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. In fact, I'd say it's the greatest love story the West has ever known. And as the setting sun cast golden light through the windows of their home, illuminating the life they had created together, both knew it was true. From fear and tragedy had come love and joy, proof that sometimes the heart knows best which direction to run.